When I was a boy growing up in Oklahoma, we sometimes rode up to the old family farm in Kansas where my dad grew up. And one of my cousins came up to me and said, "Have you ever hypnotized a chicken?" Hypnotized a chicken? Well, no, nor did I think such a thing was possible. But my cousin and I, we climbed up on the roof of the barn where the chickens roost, and we crept up behind them. And he grabbed a hen and he tucked its head under its wing, and then he whirled it around 10 or 15 times. And then he set it on the edge of the roof of the barn. It was the damnedest thing. The chicken just stood there, motionless, paralyzed. The reason I bring this up is that sometimes the existence in the modern world of the kingdom of Saudi Arabia reminds me a little bit of that hypnotized chicken. It's unlikely. It's uncanny. It's frankly unnatural. But there it is. For more than a year, the Saudis won't let me in as a journalist. Finally, I take a job. I become the mentor to a group of young reporters at the Saudi Gazette, an English-language daily in Jeddah, Osama bin Laden's hometown. I arrive in February 2003, shortly before the invasion of Iraq. The woman standing directly behind me is Najla Fathi. We worked together for 3 months and I never see her face, only those gold-rimmed cat's eye glasses. The women reporters at the Gazette work in a separate office under the stairwell, and I only get to see them once a week in a conference room with all the other reporters. From the beginning, Najla was a challenge. She tells me she likes concealing herself. She wears the abaya, the black robe all Saudi women wear, and the hijab to cover her head, and the niqab to cover her face. The year before, there was a fire in a girls' school in Mecca. The only exit to the school was locked. The elderly guard had wandered away with the key. 15 girls died, and more than 50 were injured, many having jumped from windows to escape the flames. 17 fire engines arrived to put out the blaze, but they were stopped by a single man, a member of the Committee for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice, the country's religious police, because the girls were not wearing their abayas. The father of one of the girls saw his daughter at the locked gate. The girls were screaming for someone to let them out. The father obeyed the matawa and sent his daughter back inside to fetch her abaya. She burned to death. I suggest to my female reporters that we should do a story on the 1-year anniversary of the tragedy. Have things changed? Of course they have, Najla says. The head of girls' education was fired. Najla, that's a symbolic change. The girls died because they were locked inside a ramshackle, overcrowded building with no fire escapes. Is the government actually building safe schools for girls? Are they conducting fire drills? Are the girls still locked inside? I'm talking about women now rather than Al-Qaeda for a reason. This is a society in which men grow up largely outside the company of women. They're untrained. They haven't spent their adolescence molding their behavior around pleasing girls, which is a lot of what civilization really is. That's right, it's not so easy to be a terrorist if your girlfriend won't let you. The men are nearly incapacitated by longing. Once I go to the mall with one of my male reporters, and he spots a couple of Saudi women descending the escalator. They are entirely encased in black. Even their eyes are covered like a bird cage. BMOs, the Saudi guys call them, black moving objects. Without a trace of irony, my reporter turns to me and says, "Check them out." One of my reporters did a story about a study that was done at King Abdulaziz University, bin Laden's alma mater. Of the 2,000 students surveyed, 65% of the boys and 72% of the girls showed symptoms of depression. 7% of the girls admitted that they had attempted suicide. Let me tell you what life is like in Saudi Arabia for my young reporters. There are no movies, no theaters, no plays, no nightclubs, no music, no dating. The internet is monitored and controlled. There are very few parks or museums. There's no political life, no political parties, no unions. That entire space of life that we call civil society simply doesn't exist. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, there are royal highnesses and ordinary highnesses and everybody else. Even very rich people like the Bin Ladens know their place. You may be rich, but you are not royal. In a nation where human images are forbidden, portraits of the king and the top princes are everywhere. The streets are named after them, the hospitals, the universities. The royal family not only owns the country, they hoard all the glory. You are a guest in their house. There's nothing between the government and the mosque, except shopping. Recently, in Jeddah, a new IKEA furniture store opened its doors, and it was such a thrilling event that 15,000 people showed up. 2 were trampled to death. Consider the idleness, the boredom, the youthful population, the widespread resentment of the royal family, which steals 30 to 40% of the national revenue. Any social scientist would tell you Saudi Arabia is overripe for revolution, especially when you throw in the religious fanaticism that's such a part of the fabric of the culture. The pressures for explosive, total change in the kingdom seem irresistible. What force is greater than the anger, the frustration, the despair, the hopelessness that everywhere else in the world has led to revolutions, coups, and civil wars, but in Saudi Arabia has resulted in a kind of social coma? Fear is that force. I'm not speaking of fear of the government. The Saudis don't fear their government. It's not nearly as cruel to its citizens, or subjects, to use the correct word, as the Egyptians are. No. What they fear is the alternative. Look at the neighborhood the Saudis live in. The revolution in Egypt brought on an enduring autocracy far less liberal than the monarchy it replaced. Ditto Syria. In Iran, the revolution brought the mullahs. In Somalia, tribal chaos. And of course, Iraq, which embodies all the fears the Saudis harbor about their own future. Change does not equal progress in the Middle East. The whirl of events has produced a paralyzing fear in Saudi Arabia. And so the hypnotized chicken still stands on the barnyard roof.